so sorry. If I may call your attention up here. I'm going to go ahead and get started with my presentation here so that y'all can get to our series on time. So let's get started. Good evening. My name is Olivia Adams. I am a sophomore communication major here at Bob Jones University. And among many other duties that I have here on campus, I am the editor-in-chief at the Collegian, which is the student news organization here at Bob Jones University. And that is what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. So, if I may, I think it would be easiest if I start with my story so far and what I've done at the Collegian so far in my career. It all began when I was a freshman incoming. I knew that I was going to be a communication major, and I want to focus my major toward journalism. Communication has a lot of different routes that you can take it, but I'm very interested in the news world and the journalism route. So I wanted to get involved in something publications related, whether that was the vintage yearbook or anything with a newspaper, but I wasn't really sure what my options were. So I got here as a freshman and went to the Palmetto Green Expo, which is where they kind of broadcast everything you can possibly do here on campus. And I went and looked at 20 different tables, and none of them interested me. And I got to the very last one, and that was the Collegian. And they stopped me and asked me about any experience that I had with writing or editing. And I told them what I could do and what I'd done during my high school years, and they actually asked me to go ahead and apply right away, and they accepted me that day. So I started out just as a freshman, first year, small-time reporter on the very lowest level that you could be, and I was happy where I was. I loved it. And then around September, I'm sure you all remember, Hurricane Helene hit, and of course Bob Jones was affected significantly. We had no power and water for 3 days, I think it was. But we started to hear that up in Asheville, North Carolina, they were affected far worse than we were. By the time it got to be October, a lot of people still didn't have power or water or anything like that. And that's simply because their terrain was not able to support the amount of water that absolutely flooded the area. So right before homecoming weekend, I got an email from a student leader that asked me if I would volunteer to go up with the first team up to Asheville, North Carolina, and volunteer in partnership with Arch Ministries to help the people that had been displaced and work with some churches to get supplies to people who needed them. And I really deliberated over that. I prayed about it, and I just thought about it for a couple of days. You know, I don't want to miss my first homecoming, but I came to the conclusions that there would be another homecoming to go to, and that God just really wanted me to go, and I felt a strong urge to go, so I did. And I spent the weekend up in Asheville, and on my way up, Jonathan Lovegrove, the editor at the time, contacted me and asked me if I would write an article talking about my experience in Asheville. And I said, sure, why not? I'm here anyway. I can do my best, at least, with this new experience. So I ended up doing more of that, more running around, asking questions, investigating, and doing interviews with people who had lost their homes. I actually borrowed some random person's camera and took a bunch of pictures, and it ended up being a much bigger story than I realized. These are all pictures that I took while I was up there, and it was just truly devastating to see all of this with my own eyes. Because of course we see it on the news, and that sort of desensitizes us to what's happening. Because if you see it multiple times, it doesn't mean as much the 7th and 8th and 9th time that you see the same pictures of the same floods. But to see it with my own eyes really shook me up and made me think about, you know, what is true and what is real and what is good in this life. And I'm just going to read you a short quote from the article that I wrote when I returned. Seeing the entirety of one's material life sitting on a curb is a uniquely jarring experience, but it is a reminder of the brevity of life and the temporality of our possessions. Life's meaning must be found in the eternality of the loving God who controls all of life, both in the calm and in the storms. So that was something that really struck me while I was there, because in journalism, it's very tempting to write only about the bad things that happen, because catastrophic events make the most popular news. And by this time, the legacy media and the large broadcasting companies had stopped reporting on Asheville altogether because it had become old news. And in the light of the presidential election upcoming, they just could not compete in the spotlight. So there is a term that we use called news fatigue, which I want to introduce you to, which is what I just described about you get tired of seeing the same things, no matter how sad it truly is. And these are all headlines that were going on shortly before I made it up there. And then news framing is another term that we use in the news world, and I'm just going to give you an example here. If you look at all these headlines, and of course some of them are cut off right here, but these are all about Hurricane Helene. But the interesting thing is they're targeted toward different people. So this one over here, this is targeted towards farmers. That doesn't matter too much to you unless you are invested in the farming industry. These right here are about tourism and the outdoors, and this was the trails that were devastated by Helene. And then these are political and legal. The governor and a lawsuit going on. So that's called news framing, where you write about the same news, but you target the general story to a specific audience. But I wanted my article to reach everybody in a way that is redemptive, because it doesn't end with the sad story of the tragedy. My story ended with the redeeming qualities of tragedies like this if you are a Christian. If you know the Lord and you know that He has a purpose in everything. And speaking of which, the reason that I felt so called to go up to Asheville that one random weekend was because He used that article and that experience in my life to drive me further in my career. And that is something that I never would have seen coming. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the transitions that we saw in Religion last year. Jonathan Lovegrove was our editor-in-chief last year. He did that for 2 years, and he was excellent. He's very well known here at Bob Jones. He's very involved. But he felt that the Lord was calling him to move to a different school so that he could pursue other career opportunities at the same time. And as he started to transition out, he slowly started talking to me about if I leave and if I move on. And I was like, oh, don't say that. Who's going to be editor if it's not you? And he would just give me this look that I didn't really care for. And it got to be March and April, and he asked me to be his successor. And at first I said no. I was like, I'm a freshman. I've only just written a few stories here. I'm very new to this, and I just don't know enough. I cannot fill your shoes. But I ended up, I prayed about it, and I did end up taking the job, obviously. And it has been just an incredible blessing in my life, because God is teaching me things that He never could have taught me if I hadn't taken the job. I have a tendency to rely on the things that I know, or that I think I know. And in taking a job where I really was not experienced enough, it's not only required me to lean more on the Lord and His grace and the strength He provides, but also the people that work with me, because I have a great staff behind me and a number of Bob Jones professors who invest a lot in us, and so that has been just an excellent sign of God's provision in my life. So a little bit about the job that I do. This is a flow chart of what we do in an average week at the Collegian. Obviously, this arrow right here, that's me. And then everyone under here is the people that I sort of oversee. And the Collegian looks a lot different than it used to. But over here we've got what was always there, the writers and the comic artists. They answer to a copy editor. Of course, we've got our layout design for the print editions. We do have our own website now, which is big fun to run. And then 2 social media accounts, lots of photography, of course, and we also have a podcast. It's an award-winning podcast, I'm proud to say. So we've got a lot going on at the Collegian, but it's super exciting to be able to see all of the pieces come together when we create a big project. And I'm not the only one with a sort of interesting story. The Collegian is super cool because people who aren't necessarily interested in pursuing journalism as a profession are involved at the Collegian. So here we've got this is just an example, 3 people who are involved in very different majors, but still, these are all writers. They still write for me at the Collegiate. You know, theater, humanities, math, education. Writing doesn't necessarily come into a lot of their day-to-day, but they choose to work at the Collegiate and hone their writing skills because those are invaluable in any career. And then we do have several major-related participants as well. My copy editor, Bethany Brooks, is an English education major, so she's able to focus on her editing and proofreading skills. Amelia Boyd is our podcast host, and she's a journalism major, so she is really practicing for her future career. And then Hannah Glass is my layout editor. She's a graphic design major, so she is practicing exactly what she learns in class in real life. So it's super exciting to see the opportunities that the Collegiate can provide for all sorts of students. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Collegiate because obviously it has changed significantly since it was founded. It was founded in 1987. It began as the student lab, and it was more of just a practice time for the journalism majors to kind of experiment with their skills and put together a print edition, which they distributed weekly. I can't even fathom that now. We do not do that, needless to say, but they handed those out weekly. And Betty Solomon was the staff advisor. She was a full-time Bob Jones professor, and she was here for many, many years. She was also one of the Collegiate sponsors when it first got started. So she really helped them get on their feet, and we have such a great foundation laid by her. And then this little fun fact here, they worked on one singular Mac Plus with a tiny monitor. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't even know what that looks like, and I should have looked it up, but we do not have those anymore. This is what their first print edition looks like on the left here. And they did those weekly, which is beyond fathoming to me. And then on the right here is the original Collegiate staff. And if you look closely, here on the far left is Mr. John Matthews. I believe many of you are pretty familiar with him. He's the Vice President of Alumni Relations and Advancement here. But he was actually on the first staff. So very interesting. There's lots of connections here with alumni and even current staff still. And now, how it is now. We're in our 39th year of the Collegiate. We are currently, as I speak, working on the second print edition of this year. So we're super excited about that. And the Collegiate is now counted as an extracurricular course that earns you class credit if you're involved and you keep up with your work and your deadlines. So that's a really big blessing to offer to the people who are spending hours weekly on their work. They can get some class credit for what they do. Mr. Nathaniel Carey is now our staff advisor. He is a part-time instructor here at Bob Jones, but he actually has several years of real newsroom experience. He came from the journalism field and then started teaching. So he has just so much wisdom and experience to offer us as we hone our skills. And then we distribute our paper twice a semester. Out in the foyer here, as you leave, you can pick up a copy of the first edition of this year. And we actually have our own office in the mezzanine now, which is such a blessing. And here are a couple pictures for you. Here's what we work on now. In comparison to the one tiny Mac Plus, we've got several lovely Mac computers that we can all work on together and collaborate on projects. So we're super grateful for what we have. And then a couple pictures of our staff recently. On the left there is, this is from last year in February. We attended the South Carolina Press Association Awards in Columbia. And we are recognized by the state of South Carolina as a legitimate collegiate news organization. So we go to this award ceremony and compete with schools like Clemson and Furman and the University of South Carolina. And I say we have an award-winning podcast because we won an award against huge schools like that. So that is really exciting. We love what we do here. And here on the right is the first meeting of this year with our most current staff. We are up to about 30 people now, so it's grown significantly even in the last 5 years. So I am going to talk to you a little bit about our print and distribution process. Not too much because a lot of it is very detailed and a little bit boring, if I'm being honest. But it's very different than it used to be. So I'm just gonna talk you through a little bit of that. Here on the left, I am operating on one of our computers there, and that is a program called InDesign, and that is not at all my strength. It is actually the bane of my existence. I am not a layout designer, and I'm very grateful for our graphic design team. But after we have received all of our written works and our photos and our comics, I give all of that to my designers. We have 3 designers now, and they split up the paper and assign who takes what piece and who puts it where, and they do just an amazing job. We do that in about a week, and then that is sent to the press here on Bob Jones. And it's very convenient for us to be able to send it to a press on campus, and they are such great people to work with. They get that done in about 6 days. We usually print around 16 to 1,700 copies. And those not only get distributed all around campus in every building, but we also distribute at the FMA, which is here on the right. And we also get a lot of copies to Advancement, and they take those on their business trips. So the Collegian typically makes it several places around the country, which is super, super exciting. And speaking of human creativity and my amazing graphic design team, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about a very hot topic in today's news world, AI integrity and human creativity. As much as I don't love the long process of putting the paper together, there is something very rewarding about holding in your hands something physical that you made. And I think that is something that is invaluable. Even in today's digital age, where paper copies have been significantly devalued, I still think there's great value in putting something together that's tangible. And AI is something that we as journalists are really battling because it's taking people's jobs. People use AI to write articles for them and to edit photos for them, when that used to be solely a human's job. And so it's very interesting to see that battle take place. But where a lot of journalists land is that AI does have a place in our world because it's not going anywhere. We're not going to ever get rid of AI, and it does have some helpful uses. But I and many other journalists do not believe that AI's place is anywhere in the newsroom. Because, for example, here is another picture on the top there that I took in Asheville after the hurricane. If you show that picture to AI, AI has no context for the backstory of the people that were involved in this accident here. This is an overturned vehicle. And it doesn't know anything about what happened in this looted gas station. We can see that because we're humans. We know how stories work. We were made to tell stories. But authenticity is only available in human works. Similarly, AI wouldn't have any of the correct words to describe the compassion that this man on the bottom here had for his fellow humans. He traveled from Alabama all the way to Asheville to cook food for 2 weeks. He just took off of his job and cooked food for displaced persons after the hurricane because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And he did that for free. He was not compensated. The only recognition he received is one picture of the side of his head in the Collegian at Bob Jones University, which is not saying much. So, but there is a compassion there, and there is a need for real emotion that only humans can provide. And God has given us the gift to create, so it really doesn't make much sense why we would just give that up when we have so much more capacity to tell stories. So what do we do at the Collegian? Well, we are the student news organization of Bob Jones University. We have many outlets. We try to do the best that we can to cover every area of campus and get news not only to the students and professors here, but to all of you who you don't live here anymore, but you're still interested in Bob Jones. You want to know what's going on campus. So we want to keep the extended family of Bob Jones updated on what's going on. This is our theme for the year. My designer to put this together. Our theme is to explore, because not only am I new to my position, but several of my lower staff and other editors are also new. So we're really just exploring the capabilities that God has given us, and we're each finding our own place on the Collegian and to see how we can best use our gifts together to make something great. And then our mission is to promote real reporting, honest storytelling, and excellence in all of our work for the glory of God. Real reporting. We want to talk to people. We don't just want to report our own opinion because that's not news. That's just what I think. We want to hear what other people think. We want to hear real experiences. Honest storytelling. We don't compromise on the truth. We tell the truth with grace, and that is something that I think is unique in today's news world. We tell it with grace, but we don't compromise on the truth. And excellence in all of our work. We don't settle for what's good enough. Mediocrity is not success. We do our best in everything because that is what God asks of us. So, if you like what you heard and you would like to help us in a small way at the Collegian, we are planning on doing a nostalgia edition for next year because it's going to be the 100th anniversary, and we want to do a black and white version. So if you have any black and white pictures that you would like to submit to the Collegian, please just go ahead and email them to me, and I will save those for the future. And you can get that contact information either from me after this, or Mrs. Veracruz also has it, or if you wanted to take a picture of the slide. And then just a couple of prayer requests. I was asked to give just a couple ways you could pray for us. If you could just pray that we would continue to do our work in diligence and that we would not grow weary of doing what is a good work. And just the continued funding that we've been blessed to have. We have many people who support us in all that we do, and that has been such a blessing. But if you could just pray that that would continue so we would be able to keep giving you the news that you need. And then for me personally, that I would be able to train our new staff well. I am learning my own position while teaching other people, and that has been really stretching for me in a very good way. So if you would just pray that that would continue to go well. You can find us online at several different places. The top line there is our website where we post all of our stories. Not all of our stories make it into print just because of how much we publish throughout the year. And then the bottom two are our social media pages if you're not already following us. But thank you so much for being interested in the Collegian, and thank you so much for your attention. It has been such a joy to come and share all that God is doing for us at the Collegian. Thank you.